And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back the extraordinary, live from UK, B.A. Paris, here to give us the inside scoop on her latest book, The Guest. B.A. Paris, welcome back to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me back. I was already here last year, I think. And this time I'm going to talk about The Guest, my new book, which was published last week. So at its heart, there's a guest who comes to stay and she overstays her welcome. And, well, of course, there are murderous consequences because of that. But basically, Iris and Gabriel, the couple at the centre of my book, come back from holiday and they find that their friend Laure has moved into their house. And they're fine with it because she has keys to their house. They have keys to her flat in Paris. And they're happy to help her because she says she's left her husband, Pierre. She's found out something about him and she wants to stay with them for a while. But of course, she overstays her welcome. They find out that she's been sleeping in their bed while they've been away. And then she starts wearing Iris's clothes. She moves around furniture and stuff. And gradually, they just get a little bit fed up of her, especially Iris. And to escape from Laure, from her presence, she makes friends with a couple that are new to the village. And they have their own cuckoo in the nest in the form of a gardener, Joseph. And basically, the book is about how these 6 people interact and, of course, what goes wrong in all the relationships once everybody gets together. And yet there's lots of secrets and lies and betrayals, as always.
Secrets and lies and betrayals and mind-bending twists that, of course, only B.A. Paris can serve up. Well, I am so excited to talk about all of them and to get into all of the delicious details. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. So we are broadcasting live to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So hi, mystery and thriller fans. Hello, everyone. No matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And because Mondays can be murder, we're going to make them a little less painful for you and get your week off to a killer start. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome, friends. Here's the drill. Every Monday, I give you my handpicked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask New York Times bestselling author B.A. Paris anything you've ever wondered about her writing process, about those mind-bending twists, about the cracks and crevices in marriages that she always explores so powerfully and poignantly. Anything you're wondering about, just get the questions going in the comments and I'll get them right over to her. Robin, joining us from Facebook, says, hello, Sarah and Bernadette. Hi, Robin. So great to see you. She says she is laughing out loud at the cuckoo in the nest.
Yeah, there's 2 of them in my book, 1 for each couple.
Interesting. So Bernadette, as someone who lives in a major city that people like to visit, I have my fair share of house guests. So I was laughing at some points as I was reading along because there is those moments. And I have to know, was there a house guest of yours that inspired this story?
Well, not as bad as Laure in my book, but yes, I have had house guests that kind of stay a bit longer than you'd like them to, because I always think that 3 days, I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said, after 3 days, fish and guests smell, or something like that. And I know that sounds a bit mean, but 3 days for me, 3 evenings, so that's 3 nights, that's 4 days. And I think, for 4 days, I can really concentrate on them and give them a good time, make them lovely meals to eat and take them out and about. But after 4 days, I'm quite exhausted and I just need that space. So if somebody said they were coming to stay with me for 2 weeks, I'd find that really hard work. Of course, it depends who they are. And if it was a friend in need, I'd let them stay for a long time, as long as she didn't sleep in my bed or anything like that. But yes, I think we've all had guests that have kind of overstayed their welcome a little bit.
Exactly. Sleep in your bed, start wearing your clothes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Getting a little too cozy. But I thought what was, really interesting was we're looking at 3 really different marriages, 3 really different couples. We've got Esme and her husband who have just moved into the neighborhood. Esme's pregnant. Her husband's much older. They're dealing with a gardener friend that they're trying to corral. Each of the couples has so much at stake. And I was thinking that and then Laure and her her husband Pierre are wrestling with some potentially marriage exploding revelations. And then of course we have, the couple that we start out with. So I have so many questions. So first of all, when you, let's talk about the stakes, because I think that really ratchets up the tension. So when you were crafting these 6 people, these 3 different couples, did it come naturally to you to have them all at a steady simmer about to boil over, or did you have to ratchet the tension up?
I think, at the beginning, it all seems quite calm. It's only a few chapters in that Laure becomes annoying. So yes, it's that case of starting slowly and just ratcheting the tension up a little bit so people know that eventually it's going to explode, and in the worst possible way. But I think that's it. You just have to lead your reader along, but make them know that there is something that's going to happen, and just keep that tension going.
Yeah, because I was noticing that even when at the beginning there isn't anything that, I mean, we have a prologue, and then it goes back to 6 months before that, so we know something really bad is coming. But beyond that, the devastating prologue that we glimpse in the first 3 pages, we feel this mounting tension and this mounting sense of dread, and you do it so effectively. And I was wondering, from a craft perspective, what do you think is the key to that?
I think it's just building on that tension. And I think it's, just having those short, snappy chapters with kind of not exactly a cliffhanger at the end, but just making people want to read on more. What you want is the reader to say, I'm going to read one more chapter and then I'm going to go to sleep. And of course, they get to the end of the chapter and there's just that little hook or that little thing. And they say, well, I'll just read one more chapter. And that's what you have to do. And always that there's something tantalizing at the end. So they do want to read on and they know more is going to happen. It's trying to keep, the book flowing. That's what it is, really.
Well, I can testify firsthand that I stayed up late last night reading this book because of exactly what you said, those short chapters. And I kept thinking I could do one more. I said at midnight. And then I looked again at the clock and it was 12:20. And I thought, well, I can't stop now because something really exciting had just happened. I thought, well, they're short. They're one more. And then I looked at the clock again and it was 2 a.m. and I was, 10 more chapters in. So I'm here to firsthand testimony that is definitely working. Bernadette, let's take a look at some of this incredible praise. Publishers Weekly raving bestseller Paris orchestrates a symphony of subplots in this creepy domestic thriller. Paris deftly juggles the many characters and plot strands on the way toward a wild climax. The results are electrifying. First of all, congratulations on that rave review from PW. Let's talk about your process, because they're talking about the many characters and the plot strands. So how do you plot it out, or do you plot?
I'm not a plotter. I know I always have my opening scene, which was, the prologue, and I know where I want to go. I know, how I want my book to end. I actually knew the sentence that I wanted to write, that last sentence in that book. So my whole journey was getting to that sentence. And of course, I've thought about it a little bit, and I have a couple of waypoints, but I just actually let the characters lead me. So I might have a character at the beginning of the book that I think won't have a huge role in the story, but in fact, as they develop, I think, well, actually, yes, you can do this and that and the other. And I just really like writing like that because it's fresh for me. It's a surprise for me, because I don't know everything that's going to happen. And I don't understand how people can plot books. And plotters can't understand how I can not plot books. But I think, we really are 2 different kinds of writers. And we each have our own way of doing it. And I don't know what you do, Sarah. Are you a plotter or are you a pantster and just fly by the seat of your pants?
So I was a pantser, Bernadette. I was a pantser, and I am actually going to try plotting my next one because I write true stories, because they are true crime told in a fictional style. The crime itself was so complicated and all of the characters were so complicated that my brain was getting fried trying to keep track of all of the characters to the actual calendar events. So I'm going to try plotting, but it doesn't come naturally to me.
No. I find it really hard because I always think, how do I know what's happening in chapter 3 until I kind of get there? And I've written chapter 2. So, and I really like, it means that you have to do a lot of editing as you go along. So, of course, I might get to chapter 10 and think, oh, that's just happened. That's good. Oh, but now I have to go back and alter those 9 chapters and put in little things to get, So it's a much, it's heavy on editing, Whereas I think somebody who really plots out their book and probably writes 10 or 20,000 words plotting out their book, when they actually come to write it, it goes very quickly because they don't really have to do that much editing. So yeah, it's interesting. It'd be interesting to get two authors who write differently with the same idea for a story and just see what they come out with.
That would be interesting.
It would
Oh my
be.
God, that would be really interesting. It would,
An
and I'm
experiment.
thinking of a reality TV series. We
That's
could
right.
follow the writers. Oh my gosh, I love that. We have Renee joining us now from sunny, beautiful Southeast Florida. Hi, Renee.
Wow.
Welcome to the conversation.
Hi.
And we have John joining us from Northeast Ohio. Hi,
Hi,
John.
John.
Welcome to the conversation. Renee wants to know, how long did the guest take you to write?
Okay, well, actually, it was quite quick. I think, the plot is quite linear. Whereas, for example, for my previous book, The Prisoner, the plot was more complex. So that took me longer to write. So probably The Guest, I wrote it in about 4 or 5 months, I would think, to get a good first draft, because I knew, I kind of had a fairly good idea of where the story was going. Although, as I say, I don't plot it out, but it didn't deviate too much from what I had kind of thought about in my head. And it's a really linear, and I really it's really concentrated on the relationships between the 6 people, between these 3 kind of couples. And I really love writing about that. So I find when I'm writing about something that I really enjoy, relationship books, it goes much faster.
Oh, I love that. Robin would like to know, do your characters speak to you? Do they ever take over sometimes?
Absolutely. And probably the most kind of strident case of that was Jack in Behind Closed Doors, because of course, in Behind Closed Doors, Jack is the controlling husband, and I knew that he was going to be a bad guy, but I really didn't know how bad, and I was shocked at what I managed to write, because when I would read it over the next morning, and I'd think, gosh, where did that come from? Because it's so dark, and there's things that I wrote in Behind Closed Doors that I wouldn't write now. That book was so dark, I don't think I could ever write a book like that. So it was I really felt that Jack was taking over and saying, no, you need to make me even more evil than you're thinking, And I really felt that sometimes he was writing it because I actually didn't know where it come from. So it's a really good question. But yes, my characters do speak to me. They tell me what they can do.
Robin, thank you for that great question. Bernadette, thank you for that terrifying, honest answer. I guess I'm curious if Jack's darkness scared you, as it scared me, but you wrote him, where do you think that darkness is coming from? I
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think I've written a book as dark since, and I don't think I'll write one again. I think it was just a lot of things. I had actually found an agent for another book who then said, "Oh, I'm not taking you on." After, when I remember just being so angry, and I'd kind of had this idea for a book about a controlling husband. And honestly think a lot of my anger and the disappointment at, a lot of anger at the agent who had said, yeah, I'm going to take you on, I'm going to publish your book. It wasn't Behind Closed Doors, it was a previous book. And then actually said, after I'd done the work on it, oh, I've decided not to take you on after all. And I honestly think, I remember being absolutely furious and thinking, right, I'm going to write this really good book now. And I just channeled all my kind of anger into, I think, Behind Closed Doors.
Wow. Okay. Robin saying, how cool that your characters surprise and even shock you. Did anyone surprise or shock you in The Guest?
I can't really say, can I?
Okay.
I don't want to.
You could tell us which character. You could tell us which character.
Yeah, yes. I mean, they all did in a way, because Laure, Laure is quite naive at the beginning, and she never really got over that. She never actually matured very much. So that quite surprised me, because I did think that she would step up to the mark. But as I don't really know where my characters are going with the story, so I am always quite surprised by my characters and what they do.
Interesting. You guys, the book is out now, and you can order from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, here is that link for you to be able to get your hands on the guest and immerse yourselves in the world of these 6 people, these 3 couples, and let us know what you think. So here is that link for you to click and order and get your mitts on the guest. Robin's saying, yes, channel that anger and frustration right into evil controlling Jack. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Bernadette, let's take a look at some of this other amazing praise. So I want to we have a lot to talk about here, but first from the Patriot Ledger saying this taut, intimate, propulsive domestic thriller is fraught with impulsive bad choices that ordinary people can make. Was that something you wanted to address? Was the choices that people make in a marriage and in themselves?
Yeah, I think we're all capable. We're all flawed. None of us is perfect, and we all make choices, and sometimes we regret the choices that we make. And I think it's human nature to sometimes make bad choices. So I really liked actually that. I thought that was really perceptive, that review of the book. And yes, it is fraught with impulsive bad choices, and that's exactly what happens. A lot of it is impulse and just reaction. And maybe if somebody had thought about what they were doing and took a step back, it wouldn't have had the same consequences. But of course, for my book, it worked out well that they decided to act impulsively. But that is very good. And I do base it, on human nature. We all do that sometimes. We act impulsively and we think, oh, if only I'd thought before I'd said that or before I'd done that, it would have had a different outcome.
I think about that all the time. I'm always regretting things that I said or kicking myself. Why didn't I say this? Why did I say that? But I also look around at the choices that people make, either that I see in real life or that I see in, on TV, and I think, oh no, why are you doing that? But it's so true because we're not perfect and we are all flawed. Bernadette, you have 5 children, right?
I do, but they're grown up now. So, and I have a couple of grandchildren, little tiny grandchildren that have arrived in the last year, which is lovely. But yes, I do have 5 daughters.
And Renee would like to know, do any of your daughters write with you or on their own, or are you the only writer?
For the moment, I'm the only writer. What they do is they'll read my books. They'll read a book. It just depends who's not so busy, because when I've written it, I'll always say, is there anybody that wants to read this just to tell me what they think of it? And so 1 or 2 of my daughters say, yeah, I can do that, which is great. And I have 2 daughters that have said recently, oh, maybe, and they've actually are really good writers at school. I could see from the stories they wrote that they have a lot of imagination, and that's what you need to be a writer. You just need to have a big imagination, and they do. So I don't know, maybe later on, they're still quite young, so maybe they might one day write. I think a couple of them might try and write a book. One is very interested. She has a story that she wants to write, so I'm hoping she'll do it.
In the mystery and thriller genre, Bernadette?
Yes, it is, yes.
Oh my gosh, how cute would it be if you had mother-daughter Paris's?
Well, actually, she did say, one of them, the other one said, why don't we write a book together? And I thought, well, why not? But I'm not sure what that is like, writing a book with your daughter. It'd be an interesting experience. Maybe we will one day write one together.
Lisa Scottolini and her daughter co-write an advice column together and have written advice books together, but they have not I don't think they've written a mystery book together, although her daughter Francesca has written a gothic dark academia book, Ghosts. Yes, so we will look forward to a mother-daughter Paris duo. Renee saying you must love spending time with your grandchildren.
Yes, well, one lives in Amsterdam, so I don't get to see her every day. I go and see her once a month, or she comes to me. She's tiny; she's only a year old. And then I have another daughter who's just had a little baby, but in Paris. So neither of them are in the same country as me, but the Paris daughter is coming to stay for a whole month, so I'll get to look after the baby, and it's lovely, though. I never really was one of those mothers that said, oh, I can't wait to be a grandmother. I just thought, I've had 5 daughters, so I'd like a little bit of time, before grandchildren arrive. But it's true, it is lovely to have grandchildren. You get all the nice bits and none of the kind of hard work.
And none of the sleepless nights. Oh, Robin is saying that Rise Bowen and her daughter are working together. Oh, how exciting.
Really? Ah, well, I'll have to do that then.
Yes, and actually, Rise Bowen is speaking on Sunday at an International Thriller Writers ITW Present session, free and open to all. So any Rise
Ah,
Bowen
that's good to know.
fans, go to ITW International Thriller Writers and join the Zoom live on Sunday. Speaking of Rise Bowen. So Bernadette, I was so excited when I was reading this book because I was, of course, a voracious little reader when I was a little girl growing up. And I had 3 favorite books, and one of them was The Secret Garden. And as soon as I got to the part where you referenced The Secret Garden, I was so excited because I've never seen another book reference The Secret Garden, although so many of us love it. And then, and then of course we have Gabriel, the husband, who has a secret garden, a walled-in garden with a gate, and he starts to dig it up and rehab it. I'm a gardener. And so I was just cavelling. I was so excited. So tell us about your connection to The Secret Garden.
Well, I mean, it was one of the films I watched over and over again with my children. And of course, I read the book when I was a child as well, when I was young. So I absolutely loved it. It was just that thought of having this secret garden that people didn't know about, and you could go in there. And I hadn't intended to put it in this book at all. And, it was just that Gabriel, as his character developed, and I needed him to have an escape, I thought gardening. And then I thought a secret garden, a garden that he'd never had time, not really a secret garden, but a garden that had come with the house, right down at the end with a little door, walled garden. And they were going to make a vegetable garden inside, and they'd never had time. And suddenly he thinks, well, actually, because he's on gardening leave, as we call it in England, I don't know whether you call it that, he's a doctor and he's burnt out, and they've told him to take some time off. So, and he's wondering what he's going to do while he's not, while he's got his time off, and he finds the garden and he thinks, yeah, okay, time to get, and I was so happy because, I did love referencing The Secret Garden.
Yes, that was such a high point for me because I'd never seen that featured in, I don't think any book, but especially not a mystery and thriller. And Gabriel's, reminiscing that this garden has a bench, and he just was expecting Mary to be the character in The Secret Garden, to be in there. And of course, as a little girl who read that book, I wanted a secret garden behind the locked door, and it was such a special reference, Bernadette. So I just wanted to say to acknowledge that and say how much I love reading. Oh, Renee remembers reading The Secret Garden when she was a kid, because we were all little readers. I love that. So the Big Thrill, speaking of ITW, International Thriller Writers, Bernadette was featured in this month's The Big Thrill, which is the magazine of International Thriller Writers. And they said B.A. Paris once again pushes comfort zone boundaries in her newest sinister thriller. Do you set out to push boundaries, Bernadette?
I think so. I think, yes, I think I do, just to see how far a human, especially in some of my books, for example, I love exploring how far would you go to protect somebody you love, because we all think we've got a boundary that we'd only do certain things. But for example, are we all capable of killing somebody? It's a terrible thing to say, but would there be any point when we might? For example, if one of our children were threatened, and I love pushing those boundaries and having normal people who think that they would never do anything terrible, but suddenly finding out that they are doing something terrible because they want to protect somebody they love. And I do love pushing those boundaries. I think we're all capable of doing things that we don't think we're capable of until we're actually confronted with a situation that, might be untenable for us.
Yeah, exactly. I find it interesting when people are so quick to say, start a sentence with, I would never.
Yeah.
As soon as someone says I would never, I immediately think to myself, challenge accepted. I'm going to push you on that boundary because there's nothing that any of us would never do, because if our backs are against the wall, first and foremost, every living creature seeks survival. So whether any animal, any human, anything, any living creature seeks survival first and foremost. And there's nothing that any of us wouldn't do to survive. And so I thought that was really interesting when I saw this particular review about in the Big Thrill about pushing those boundaries, because I think when you remove those and you make people realize we're actually all the same. We all just want to
Mhm.
survive and be okay. It's
Mhm.
unifying and it takes down those differences. And at a particular point in time right now, where there is so much othering internationally of them and us being different, creating that likeness, I think is really important.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't think we realize how far we would go to survive. We really don't. We don't know what we will do to survive because the instinct to survive is huge and it's something that we can't really control. So, it is it's really interesting to push that boundary of survival,
I
whether
love
it's survival, of yourself because you might be killed, or survival of your marriage, survival of something else. It's, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're going to die, but it's that instinct to preserve what you have, I think.
exactly. And it's interesting because in the research in my book, I found in researching murder statistics, I actually was interested to find that, first of all, 95% of homicide victims, of murder victims, are women, not hugely surprising.
No.
And that most murderers are men, also not hugely surprising. The number one reason that the few women who do commit murder is to save the lives of themselves or their children. But that's not the number one reason that men commit murder. Men are more motivated by primal emotions of rage, greed,
Yeah.
jealousy,
Mhm.
but not survival of self or children. And so I found the
Mhm.
differences in
That's
these
interesting.
about why and how men and women commit murder to be very
Mhm.
fascinating.
It is. It is.
Exactly. You guys, I just want to remind you, we have just 4 minutes left. Oops, 3 minutes left. But the book is out now, and you can order from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. We love to support our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, here you go. Click and order your very own copy of The Guest and immerse yourself in the lives of these three couples. Let us know what you think. Robin says she's paying such close attention to this discussion. She didn't even notice it started snowing outside.
Oh,
she's
how lovely. I
tuned,
bet it looks pretty.
she's tuned into the murder and mayhem. So didn't even notice that it's snowing at her house. Robin, you're paying attention and we appreciate that. Harriet Tice, internationally bestselling author of Blood Orange, raves about your ability to your expert plotting and says this book is compellingly told. She calls it a cautionary tale that will put you off ever having anyone stay with you again. I raced through it. I loved that bit of praise from Harriet Tice.
She's great.
Harriet, thank you so much. You guys, I think we have questions we have time for 2 more questions. Okay, let's get this one from Amanda. She would like to know what your advice is for aspiring authors.
I think really just, keep at it. It's really hard. But, just keep on writing and then get your book out there and just have that determination to do something with what you've done. Because if you've written a book, it's no mean feat. To be able to write a book is absolutely incredible, to do 90,000 words. So, and then try and do something with it. But you have to study the market. You have to know the market. You have to know what genre your book is. I didn't know anything like that. I didn't know that Behind Closed Doors was a psychological thriller. For me, it was just a book. But I think now it's much more important to know, because when you approach agents, you have to say, I've written a psychological thriller, or I've written this or that. So study the market and find out which authors have written, that you think your work is like such and such an author. And then, try maybe to approach their agents and say, I've written a book in the vein of whoever your author is, and and try and sell yourself that way. But just hang on to that inner feeling in your gut that you are going to make it one day. That's the best advice I can give.
Bernadette, whose work would you liken yours to, if anyone's?
Well, I don't know really. I suppose many of the other thriller writers out there, I suppose, like I don't know, Ruth Ware, people like that. I don't really know. But I presume we're all writing more or less the same kind of books. There's lots of us thriller writers that have all started out about the same time, which is incredible, because I think there's that explosion of thriller writers. And yes, I don't know. I've been compared to, I know, people will say, if you like such and such an author, read B.A. Paris. So obviously the readers make the link themselves, you know.
And it's so interesting to see those links, isn't it? Robin saying, I am in awe of authors. Oh, Robin, thank you so much. Jane,
you.
welcome to the conversation, saying, thank you for this interesting
Oh,
discussion. I can't wait to read this book. Oh, Jane, thank you so much
thank you,
for joining.
Jane.
Y'all, we are out of time. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you so much for spending part of your Mystery Monday with us. And for all of those who are watching and didn't get a chance to comment, or if I didn't get a chance to get to your comment, thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Hannah, Nancy. Just making sure, Loretta, John, Cece, Joe, Robin, Linda, thank you, Con, Deb, John again, Alice, Trina, Rosemary, Ann, G, Irma, Susan. Thank you all for spending your time with us. And if I didn't get a chance to get to you, we appreciate you being here. I hope your week is off to a killer start. I'll be back this evening with Lisa Unger and Mark Greeny. So have a great Monday, and I will see you then.